Start out by saying, kind of a repeat from this morning for some of you. The information that I have right now is it's good, it's general, it's preliminary, because this investigation is still in its early stages, even though we're hours into this. The information I give out or have given out could change at any time. We want to update it as possible, but things can change day to day, hour to hour, potentially. So with that, let me tell you what happened this morning. The King County Sheriff's Office received a few phone calls this morning, 911 calls, about some kind of disturbance with gunfire at a residential house behind us, the 7700 block of Lake Alice Road. On the way out here, so deputies from all over the north part of King County came out here, from Sammamish, Snoqualmie Pass, as far as Redmond Ridge, all rushed out here at this call. En route, we learned that there was a neighbor who had medical experience who was providing aid to an injured individual, presumably who had been shot but was surviving. When deputies got here, they discovered sort of a chaotic scene, but what they did when they entered the property is they immediately took one young male, teenage male, into custody. They discovered that there was in fact one injured teenager. That teenager was given medical attention and was quickly transported to Harborview Medical Center. When deputies entered the residence and property itself, they discovered 5 deceased individuals inside the home. These included 2 adults and 3 juveniles. I don't have the specific ages of the juveniles, but I think it's fair to say that they were young teenagers. Beyond that, I don't know any demographic information on them. Once those bodies were discovered, clearly we understand that this is a hugely significant crime scene, and we started our incident command structure process, where we started determining, first of all, we get the scene safe. Second of all, we determine what resources we need, who we're going to call out, how we're going to replace individuals that have other duties throughout the department. And that really started around 6:30 a.m. and we've been doing that ever since. One of the first steps was to call out our King County Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit. They're going to be the lead investigators in this case. They'll live with the case from today until it's concluded sometime in the distant future. Along with that task, we called out the State Patrol, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab Crime Scene Response Team. It was determined that this is a very significant scene with multiple victims, a difficult scene, and we needed the expertise of the State Patrol's Crime Lab to come and really take ownership of the forensic side of this. We do that because it really gives us an opportunity to know who our scientists are going to be as the case moves forward. It also gives our detectives and Major Crimes Unit a little break from having to do the forensic side of it, because we do have other homicide investigations that they're continuing to go out on and that they have in their queues. Let me take a break for a second here. Take a look at a couple notes. So I wanted to acknowledge that aside from just King County Sheriff's Office folks, deputies coming out to the scene, we were assisted by Issaquah Police Department. They came out and helped us. We had other units come out and assist. So as I talked about our incident command structure, we determined that, well, through our protocols, we're going to call out members of the King County Prosecutor's Office. Through our protocols, we determined that we would be calling the King County Prosecutor's Office to send out one of the prosecuting attorneys. That's very standard for us at a homicide scene. That prosecutor, much like our lead detectives, will stay with the case from today until it's concluded at some point. Besides that, we'll have the King County Medical Examiner's Office bringing out investigators and their doctors so they get a first-hand opportunity to see the scene themselves. All of these people will be staying with the case throughout its life, so to speak. I want to be clear that what had happened here this morning had essentially concluded before the 911 call was made or before deputies arrived. In other words, there was no significant confrontation with the young man that was taken into custody. What had happened had happened. It was done. There was no, his detention happened without any issues or any injuries. That young man is going to be booked today into the King County Youth Center. For lack of a better term, that's the juvenile jail for King County, and that's where that young man will be. Notifications have been made to family members. I think by now most neighbors have figured out that this is a significant event. We are going to be here as an investigative team for days, absolutely through today, absolutely through tomorrow, and I don't know how long it's going to take. It's going to take as long as it takes, and that's how long we'll keep the scene secure. I think that's kind of it for my presentation, but is there questions, I suppose?
Can you tell us the age of that teen that was taken into custody, and if you shared anything about what happened?
I can only say that the young man appears to be school-aged, more like a high school-aged person. I don't want to be wrong if I give you a certain age, but he's a young teen. He's a teenage, mid-teens, yeah.
And then describe again for us the number of people who have died and their age ranges, or as best you can.
Sure. So what our deputies discovered in the house was 2 adult individuals and 3 obvious juveniles. I'm not going to say what their roles in life. I can't even say for sure whether this is a parent and children. I just don't know the relationships. They could be any type of relationship. So I'm going to withhold confirming any relationships, but it does appear to be that this is a family incident, clearly a domestic violence incident that involves not only a young man who's now in significant trouble, and it involves firearms, young men and firearms.
So I know the call initially came in as a possible suicide. So did this teen, can we assume, called in to report a possible suicide when all this began?
Yeah, thanks. In fact, I did want to clarify a couple things about the initial call out. I know there's been some word about the way the call came out, and it was described as a potential suicide, or that in fact somebody had committed suicide, potentially by hanging. As we speak now, several hours later, we've determined that that was a miscommunication, a misunderstanding between the 911 caller and our call taker. The word hiding might have been misconstrued as hanging, and so our deputies did come in thinking we had some sort of a suicidal situation or perhaps a completed suicide. But really, once they got on scene, met with the first witnesses, met with the young men that they ultimately took in custody, and of course found the deceased bodies, it became evident that there was no hanging involved. I'm not going to comment on the specific content of the initial 911 calls because, as you all know, those actually become evidence.
You mentioned the one injured teen, and then also I heard you say firearms,
Sure.
plural. So could you tell us what you know about the injuries, and then
Sure.
were there multiple firearms?
I know that the person that was transported to the hospital with injuries to at least 2 parts of their body was a teenager, probably, again, mid-teens. These are not small toddlers. These are not kids in the single digits, as far as I know. I use the term firearms in general. I know that the deaths were perpetrated by firearm. I don't know if there's multiple firearms in the house. I don't know how many were used. That is something that our major crimes unit detectives are physically looking at right now as we speak.
So can you tell us if the teen that you've taken into custody and the teen that went to the hospital, are they related? Is that a good assumption?
They live in the same house, so I'll be clear. The young man that was taken in custody and the other teen that was injured and is now at the hospital, they do reside at that same house. I don't know their relationships. I can certainly surmise that maybe they're siblings, but I can't say that right now. I don't know what the relationship was, other than that they reside at the home together.
Upon you taking him, detaining this teen, is there anything that he said that you might be able to share with us?
I can't share anything about what our major crimes detectives said during their interviews, what they learned. I know that they've been doing their job. They would have been interviewing the injured individual. They certainly would have been interviewing our, what we'll call the juvenile suspect. And the content of those conversations is not appropriate for release right now.
with the three kids, were they boys, girls, and I know you said that there was possible gunshots. For the 5 victims, did they have any gunshot injuries?
Well, I'm not going to speak to the exact cause and manner of death. That'll be something the King County Medical Examiner's Office does. However, we were called out as a gunfire disturbance to begin with. So it's fair to say that that is clearly what we think had happened, but I haven't been inside the crime scene. The investigators are actually just now getting to the crime scene as far as looking at the physical bodies. The King County Medical Examiner's Office isn't here yet, and they probably won't be here for several hours, if not tomorrow. Sometimes we need to leave the evidence where it is, and deceased bodies are quite often evidence. And I know it's tough to say sometimes, but those we might need to do what it takes to keep the evidence in its best condition for the medical examiner to see. And if that's today or tomorrow, they'll be there until we're done examining them.
And sir, are the 3 kids, are they boys, girls?
Thanks. I do not know the makeup of these children other than that they are teenagers, and I don't know their exact ages. I don't know their sexes. At least that's something that the detectives haven't released to me yet.
My two questions for you, sorry, can you confirm, so where the tent is behind you, is the house directly to the right of that on the lake, or is it down the road farther? And then 2, is there any reason to believe that there could be an additional arrest in this case?
So the residence that this happened is a single-family residence. It is on the lakeside down the street. It is just past or right near the tent where they're working right now. I have no reason to think that there's going to be any additional arrests. I do not believe that there's any continued concern of the neighborhood safety or general safety to the public. This incident was a very contained tragedy within a family or within an extended family or the residents here. And as bad as it is, at least it stayed contained within this property.
You may or may not know this, but the school district took it upon themselves to send out an alert to families saying, hey, there has been a tragedy in the city, be aware and talk to your kiddos. But they also went on to say that the children involved were school age, which it sounds like that is true, and that they will confirm that, even though you may not know the relationship between the adults and the children.
Sure. So I think earlier today we talked about maybe stakeholders is not the right phrase, but there are plenty of concerned individuals and entities when something like this happens all over the country. I certainly don't blame the school district to want to put something out. It's within their right. They may not have all the accurate information. It's something that we wouldn't release yet as far as the demographics of who these people are, whether they're students here or somewhere else or homeschooled. All those things will be documented within the case reports, but these reports are not going to be completed or available for really months down the road. I'm sure we will be able to give updates as the days go on. I suspect that this briefing right now will be the last one for today. But, by all means, please ask. Really found nothing of interest. There was no repeated calls out here. The police haven't come out to this address really for any significant reason for years. So it's nothing that the local police department knew as a, quote, problem house at all.
Have the search warrant, you said you were waiting on it, so obviously has that already been executed or beginning to be executed? And also, were there any social media posts or anything alarming you've been able to uncover so far?
So, yes, so what gives us the right to be on the property is a court-authorized search warrant. That's the first thing our major crimes units detectives had to do. That search warrant has been obtained, and they have served it, and they're continuing to serve it right now. I would, based on my experience on these type of cases, this will not be the only search warrant that has been sought or granted. You talk about social media, I would think that anybody interested in this case would want to know what led up to it, most importantly, and were there things that were red flags or signs, and social media will certainly be part of that. That will require additional search warrants for electronic devices, search warrants for cell phones, for social media apps. In 2024, there's a lot of search warrants that need to be issued, served on various companies nowadays. So I would expect that to happen here.
Animal control is saw them go that way too? Is that just to gather pets, or the pets that were also killed?
I have no information about any pets being killed. That the house does have some animals, and it's really our protocol to come and get the scene cleared out of animals and things that might potentially destroy evidence. So the animals come out right away. Animal control takes care of them, and we'll do whatever it is with their protocols to release them to somebody.
This is so significant, obviously, but I can think back to Carnation some years ago. You guys had a big case like this.
Sure.
When's the last time? Was that it? Is this one of the biggest cases you have in a while?
Well, I guess in the public memory, Carnation came to everybody's mind as we all responded. Those who've been around long enough, like myself and many of these detectives and officers, the Carnation incident from 2007 certainly was an obvious comparison. Unfortunately, since 2007, we've had several domestic violence, multiple victim homicides over the years. Even in this general area, without getting into the specifics, we've had plenty of cases like this. Each one a tragedy, each one for their own nuanced reasons that they occurred, and hopefully we'll come to some kind of conclusion as to why this happened.
Thank you. What
Anything
is
else?
that teen going to be charged with, or what is he being booked on?
I don't have a specific answer as to what crime he's going to be booked on. Based on my experience,